as you and I talk about it before about John and Professor John, and I had a talk with him. It was a we talk about the various things, the war in Ukraine, Middle East, and everything. And I want to start with that. But before going there, we had a huge explosion in
Hmm.
Israel happening, as here you see in this picture. What is that,
Fuck.
Larry? Looking at what is going on in Israel.
What the fuck?
Yeah, what he said, what he said,
Yeah.
you know. Uh, I don't. That was, they tried to explain it away. Say, oh, we'd found an Iranian missile from the first 5 week bombardment, and we just set it off. Really? At This is like 1 o'clock in the morning in Israel when that goes off. That you don't wait till daylight when you can actually see what you're doing. It's not like it was, sitting next to a children's school or a hospital that it had to be detonated immediately. And even if it was, if it was next to a children's school or a hospital, well, that school and hospital are gone now. They've been devastated. Um, this strikes me as this is at a location. It's a known plant for making rocket motors, fuel, weapons. So you can't rule out that they were working on something and it was an accident and it exploded, because that was a major detonation of a large warhead of some sort, and it was not an accident. It wasn't a planned detonation by any stretch. This and uh, they said that this was somehow deliberate. I don't think it was deliberate at all. But we'll see. Some speculated Iranian sabotage. Again, I don't see Iran reaching out to strike first. They've got the diplomatic high road. They're going to maintain the diplomatic high road. They're not going to be the one to throw the first punch. They found it is costly to wait, but from a diplomatic power standpoint, it's better to be the victim than to be the aggressor. But this was no small test. To say, oh, this was just a test. We wanted to do that. I don't know if you've seen this video on the internet. So some guy, he's riding a motorcycle and he runs straight into the front of a car, and the guy flips up in the air, does two complete flips, and lands on his feet. And it's like, yeah, I meant to do that. That's this. Yeah, we meant to do that. Yeah, you blow up half your compound. Sorry, I'm not buying it.
Yeah. Larry, getting to the point about Professor Jiang, and I had him on this podcast. I talked with him. There were some strange ideas on his part about the greater Israel in the Middle East, and which I asked him, I challenged him about that. Then later on, after the podcast, I received many emails from our friends, our mutual friends, about what's going on. There is something going on with this sort of concept of greater Israel, which we know, you know, the situation, the reality of what's going on in the Middle East is obvious for many of us. And coming out and saying that Israel is going to achieve the greater Israel, is going to capture all the Middle East and they're going to run the Middle East, it's so outrageous for many people, even
Yeah.
those experts, all of them. That's why I'm doing this podcast. It's not an attack on him, or because we are challenging the concepts that he's putting out, the predictions that he's putting out. It's not any personal attack on him. And I think we have to, when we put out something, when we predict something, we have to be able to challenge. We have to talk
Sure.
about it. We have to see the reality through these sort of allegations, in my opinion. And as he did, a podcast recently which got 1 million views, more than 5 million views, in which he says one of his prediction is greater Israel. And
Excuse me.
here is Larry, what he said in that podcast about Israel.
Okay.
Fiction. Israel will achieve the Greater Israel Project.
And do you have a timeline for this?
The moment America quits this war against Iran, the moment that America leaves the Middle East, Israel will achieve the Greater Israel Project. And what's really interesting right now is that Israel is trying to drag this war out for as long as possible because they see this war as a way to destroy all its major enemies in the Middle East. You know, the Israelis have already said this. After Iran, Turkey is next.
Turkey. So you think Israel are going to conquer the Middle East?
Israel has essentially already conquered the Middle East. The only force in their way right now is America. So once America leaves the Middle East, which I expect to happen, then Israel will absorb CENTCOM, which is the Central Command, the American military bases in the Middle East, and they will achieve the Greater Israel Project. There's no other power in the Middle East that can withstand the might and power of Israel. This war is already destroying Saudi Arabia and the GCC, right? So the last opponent is Turkey. Once Turkey is brought into this war, then Israel will achieve the Greater Israel Project.
And the Greater Israel Project covers all of this region here from Turkey, Egypt, Yemen, Oman.
So the Greater Israel Project is like this, okay? So it goes from the Nile in Egypt to the Euphrates in Iraq. And it covers part of Turkey, all of Syria, all of Lebanon, all of Jordan, and parts of Saudi Arabia, which also includes Mecca.
Yeah.
What are you doing this to me? Jeez. You know, I had listened to this guy a little bit, and what little bit I had first heard about it, I knew he was completely full of shit. He is, I don't know who's, most likely in my view, he's an Israeli intelligence asset. He's been used as an information operation because what he says is just complete batshit crazy. Okay, let's step back and look at it. Oh, Israel's already conquered the Middle East. Hell, they can't conquer Gaza, for God's sake. Okay? How do you know that? Well, it started on October 7th with the attack by Hamas, and then starting October 8th, Israel's retaliation. So here we are in May of 2006. Now, almost 3 years later, you know, you hear these people that say Russia's incompetent because it hasn't captured all of Ukraine in 4 years. Well, they've captured the amount of territory that Iran has captured in Ukraine over the last 4 years plus is the equivalent of 5 Gazas. Okay? 5. And only Russia's been fighting NATO, the NATO proxy, an army that's equipped with tanks, with artillery, with drones. Here's Israel fighting Hamas, who doesn't have any of that, just sidearms, some RPGs, some long range, some rifles, sniper rifles. And they fought Israel to a standstill, an absolute standstill. And yet they're now going to take over Syria and Turkey and Lebanon and parts of Egypt and parts of Saudi Arabia and Jordan. Get out of here. I mean, you know, the guy is spinning bullshit. And what bothers me is he keeps getting on shows like he's got some credibility. I mean, what is it he's actually done? Has he ever held a security clearance? Has he ever actually had any actual involvement with military operations or with intelligence operations? You know, he's a project of somebody because even I received an quote invite that, oh, here he is. You can invite him onto your show. And I said, I got zero interest in that. I don't think he has anything intelligence to share. Then they tell him, oh, he predicted this and he predicted that. He's a tool and he's being used. But again, this is nonsensical. Israel cannot defeat Hamas. and that they're going to now defeat Hezbollah and Syria and Turkey and Iraq and Saudi Arabia. God, stop. I mean, really? They go around and say that and be taken credibly? I don't get it. Sorry, but it's just it's nonsensical. And yet, what bothers me, yeah, he came out of nowhere. I mean, just boom, pops up on the scene, and all of a sudden he's on all these talk shows, that's a directed op. That just doesn't happen. I've been, and people say, "Oh, Larry's just jealous." No, I'm not jealous. I get plenty to do on my own, but I know how this thing works. That either, when I was first approached, very, very, very first time I was ever on the media was on CNN. I think it was August of 1994. Carlos the Jackal had just been captured. And so because I'd been in the counterterrorism office, and the guy who was booking people to come on and speak was the brother of the press guy at my old office, Joe and Pat Reap, the Irish brothers. So, but once I went on TV and people saw me speak and thought, oh, he seems to know what he's talking about, that led then, I got invited to all of the shows: ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, Fox, all of it. So I know how this progresses. This guy just sort of popped up and all of a sudden becomes a phenomenon. He's shown up. Danny Haifeng interviewed him. Glenn Deason interviewed him. I think Jimmy Dore interviewed him. I mean, he's putting himself out there. And again, you remember, he approached you. You didn't approach him about coming onto your show.
Yeah. So I didn't notice that. When I went to, I found him on this, as you mentioned, this alternative media. I wanted to contact him. I didn't know how to contact him. I sent a message on his Substack, and he responded later on. He gave me his email address, and I found his email that he sent me, long before, that he wants to be on my podcast.
Yeah.
This is what happened between he and I. But Larry, the two concepts he was mentioning in this video, I think is so strange. He's talking about that the only barrier for Israel to capture all of the Middle East is the United States. As soon as the United States leaving the region, Israel is going to get the whole region.
Yeah. That's the U.S. is holding them back. U.S. is funding the damn thing. Without U.S. money, Israel's dead in the water. This guy Jiang, I thought all Orientals were supposed to, this is racist, but all Orientals are supposed to be good at math. Supposed to be, obviously, he's not a STEM candidate, because do the math. Israel's got 8 million people now. There used to be like 10 million, but they're at 8 million. And they're supposed to take and hold a territory that, from the river to the sea, so to speak, with 8 million people. And an army that's a reservist army that's getting its butt handed to it right now in southern Lebanon by Hezbollah. I don't have words to express the astonishment that someone could say something so abjectly absurd, and people would go, "Oh man, that's insightful. That's smart." God.
It reminds me of Francis Fukuyama. He said the end of history.
Yeah.
It's the end of history is here, but it's so strange that, and here is what I challenge him on this concept of Israel capturing the whole Middle East, and here is what he responded to me.
All right. So again, the Epstein files, if you just look at the Epstein files, the way you think power works, the way you think that the world is run is probably wrong. It probably is.
Yeah. You've mentioned that Ukraine was lost, the war in Ukraine was lost 2 years ago. How do you predict the war in Iran? How do you see the escalation? And what would be the meaning? Because one win or the other lose, or what is the outcome in your opinion? What would be the outcome?
I mean, the outcome is very simple. The outcome has been preordained. The outcome is to kill as many people as possible, to destroy the entire global economy, to destroy Iran, to force the United States out of the Middle East, to destroy the Gulf nation states, to suck Turkey into the war, to lead to the creation of the Greater Israel Project and eventually Pax Judaica, and then eventually to create conditions for another world war called the War of Gog and Magog, where Russia and Iran attack Israel together, which will usher in the end of the world. That's a script. That's a plan they have in mind. So it's all been preordained. It's all been scripted out, and that's exactly what's going to happen. And it's only a question of like time frame, like how long will this thing take? But they will send in ground troops into Iran. It will be a disaster, and Iran will be shattered. America will be forced out of the Middle East, and Israel will become the only standing power in the Middle East. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Do you feel that the leadership in the Middle East, in the West Asia, would be mostly influenced by Israelis? Because how you mentioned a nation of 9 million people, and we know that they haven't the capabilities, the numbers to occupy all of this land, and how they're gonna manage that, because it's not just about Iran, Turkey. You mean that they're gonna start with Iran, then they go after Turkey, but the whole region, physically, Israel is not capable of doing this.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Because again, you have these assumptions about how the world works and how power is controlled. You need population. No, you don't. Nowadays, with AI, with technology, what you can do is this. You can import labor. I'm saying after this war is over, okay? When millions are dead and the Gulf states are destroyed. I mean, you have a lot of loss of life in Iran as well, and in Israel as well. And Israel is trying to be the global empire. So it needs labor, as you point out, right? So what do? Well, you import the labor from India, from China, and from the Philippines. And what do? You microchip them, right? So that you can surveil them. You can control their emotions. You feed them drugs. They're your slaves. You have like millions and millions, 100 million of these people who will be the humanoid robots of your empire. And it can all be done with current technology. You don't have to actually build new technology to do this, but you will need an AI surveillance state. And that's why.
Yeah, you get what he's talking about, It's just mind blowing. When I was listening to him, what's happening here? Am I missing something?
No. He's. Where does he live? Let's find out where he lives, because I'm sure there's a mental institution nearby that's missing a patient. That somebody has escaped. He's crazy. Absolutely delusional. So here's Israel with a population. You said 9 million, some said 10 million, but I think many have left. It's 8 million, but somewhere in there. Turkey's 90 million people. And that Israel's going to control them, when right now Israel cannot, I come back to it, cannot control the Palestinians in Gaza. Yeah, they're killing a bunch of them, and they're killing many in the West Bank. And then they're struggling right now against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And yet they're going to take on Turkey, and Syria, and Jordan. Oh, yeah. See, Anima, you just don't understand. You just don't understand how the world works. Well, like Jiang does. I mean, the guy is a snake oil salesman. And I'll even call him a swindler. Like one of these old guys that went around hawking snake oil. Oh, this will cure everything. Fine. He's entitled to his opinion, but his opinion's not backed up by facts. What's interesting is in one other presentation, he recommended, he he's I'll call him fake Chinese, because instead of referring to the wisdom of Confucius, or talking about Buddhism or any of that, he talks about, he recommends that people read the Kabbalah. The what? The Jewish mysticism about numbers. That's what this guy's into. Yeah, that's beyond weird. So, like I said, he looks to me like he's an information operation put out there to generate this distraction, as best I can call it. But he's not a serious person. Or let me put that. He is. You need to take him seriously, because he's being used to propagate some pretty intense propaganda, like the inevitability of the Jewish state, Greater Israel. That he's out there as a mouthpiece. He's helping, if you will, prepare the environment to accept the notion of this Greater Israel. It's okay that this is predicted. This fulfillment of prophecy that Russia and Iran are going to invade Israel. Yeah, tell me about all those Iranian invasions in the last 300 years. Yeah, there haven't been any. And similarly, Russia's not been out invading countries. This is, it's just abject nonsense. And he gets away with it. Because, how you can't disprove it, because what he's talking about is a hypothetical.
Exactly. It's all about prediction and future, and something that nobody can,
Yeah, all
measure.
you can do is say, well, I disagree with you. I don't think you know what you're talking about.